welcome to this, and this is, yes, my thoughts, my views, my just gonna babble, who knows how long, probably a long time, there's a lot to go over, on the fact that TNA bit the bullet, said, screw it, let's give it a try. Spike told them, hey, let's give it a try. They got on the Ultimate Fighter, probably, a big-time show that, hopefully there's some cross-promotion for, got the biggest audience they possibly could, and announced with Hulk Hogan, with Joe Rogan being a complete goofball and loving every second of it, that TNA would go live, head-to-head, versus Raw, one night only, just to see how it goes, on January 4th. By the way, for those of you not aware, and this is so TNA to me, they're also going up against the Fiesta Bowl. Now, if you don't know what the Fiesta Bowl is, I know there's a lot of people outside the U.S. that probably don't understand what the Fiesta Bowl is. The Fiesta Bowl is part of the college football, American football, bowl series, which is kind of like, you can't call it a playoff because college football does not have a playoff system. To the best way to explain it, because if I explain it, then you'll understand why it's a big deal. The way college football works, and I'll explain it in a way of the English Premier League. That's the easiest way to explain it. You have different leagues. You have different levels. You have Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, Division 2I, and Division 3I, I think. I think that's all the divisions. Okay. In Division 1, which is the biggest division in most of the big schools and the most popular schools, you have, I believe, 13 or 14 conferences. Each conference has anywhere between 8 and probably 16 teams, I think, in those conferences. And since you have so many teams, you, of course, have to find a way to decide who the best team is, except they don't do it as a playoff system. The way they do it is they take the record, they take who you've played, strength of schedule, the schedule you've played, who have you beaten. They've taken points allowed, points scored, and a bunch of other weird, crazy mathematical formulas. Then they take all of the coaches, they vote on who they think the top 25 teams are in the country. They take that. Then they take, they've got a bunch of sports writers, and they vote for the top 25. They take all that information, they screw it, they throw it all together, and they come up with your number 1 and number 2 teams. Usually that means you have one team that has gone the whole season undefeated, and a number 2 team, and then those 2 teams will play in whatever the national championship game is, which is a rotating schedule. The Fiesta Bowl is one of the major bowls. This year it will feature 2 undefeated teams, though it's not the national championship game because these are from 2 smaller conferences that basically could get big. But basically because they're 2 undefeated teams, they're 2 smaller conferences. One team, Boise State, is on some stupid winning streak since last season. There will be a lot of media hype about this game, and this game, while it won't do national championship numbers, will probably do pretty good numbers, I would imagine. So they're also going not just against Raw, they're also going against that. Now maybe they're purposely doing that because they think that that game might take some stuff away from Raw, and then they'll be able to make even a bigger dent into Raw, where maybe Raw will, it'll get a huge rating, Raw will get like a 3.0, and Impact will get like a 1.6, and they can go, look, our rating went up, Raw's rating went down, something like that, and try to spin it to make it look like they did better than they maybe actually did. So, keep that in mind. They're also going up against that night. And for those of you that have no clue of what I just said, you can look it up on the internet. It would take an hour to explain what I just tried to explain in that long amount of time. It really would. It's totally fucked up system. Anyways, so, keeping that in mind, people are excited. They're like, oh, the Monday Night Wars could come back. Nitro could try pop a huge rating because people remember, or people have read, or people have been told that when Nitro started, people thought that Nitro was going to get decimated by Raw. which people thought. People also thought, wrongly, this as well, that maybe it wouldn't get decimated, but they would split the audience. That didn't happen either. Part of that is because the rating system, if anyone that is old enough to remember the Monday Night Wars and how the rating system works as far as TV ratings, they are faulty, and there is a big fault in them, and because people were switching from show to show, it inflated the numbers to a degree. You could argue that point, at least. So people are very excited about this, except that they are not remembering that there is a difference. WCW, even back when Nitro started, and as bad as it was, and it wasn't good, but neither was WWE, we'll get to that in a second, still had a huge corporation, media corporation behind it, Ted Turner behind it, pushing it, funneling money into it. You had WCW going back to, its Crockett roots, had name recognition. People remembered it. People, WCW has always been on, to people's minds, had always been on TBS Saturday Night, and WCW Saturday Night. And so now you were going to just, so there was already there was already a pretty good size fan base. Added to that, there was a lot of media hype. We're going to have to wait and see how much media hype this gets. It's already gotten some, but I wouldn't say as much as when Nitro started. When Nitro started, there were probably, leading up to it, I can remember it was a pretty big deal. They talked about, this will date me a bit, but they talked about it on Entertainment Tonight a lot. Now, this is back when Entertainment Tonight was pretty much the only show like Entertainment Tonight, and Entertainment Tonight was not like it is now, where it's just a tabloid show. It was much more of I don't even know if Entertainment Tonight's still on. I think it is. Where it was more of a tabloid show, or like the E channel or anything like that. It was much more like Entertainment Weekly, where it was about TV shows, and it was about movies and upcoming movies and directors and stuff going on in Hollywood, and a lot of that more kind of stuff. You still kind of had the tabloidy stuff, but it was much more about TV shows and that sort of thing than anything I would say is now. So they talked about it a lot. Leading up to it, of course, you had CNN. They had their own show like Entertainment Tonight. They talked about it. You had a pretty good media blitz to hype it. And so when Nitro started, it had behind it a lot more and a much better base to build off of than Impact does. A much bigger company. You compare where WCW was at the time, where TNA is at the time. TNA has not really grown, even since they've, gone to the 2 hours. Their house show numbers right now stink. I'm not saying that to down TNA. I'm saying that just to point out they stink. Over the last couple months, their house show numbers are horrendous. And particularly for a nationally televised company, you should not be, and I'm not just talking ROH, I'm talking, it's gotten to the point now where a lot of the major indies around the country who do very good advertising or have very good word of mouth are now doing better numbers on a consistent basis than TNA is when it comes to their house show numbers. So that's not good. There's all of that leading up to TNA. So TNA doesn't have the big springboard to go off of. They also don't have as much talent as WCW had at the time. Remember, WCW did have a lot of names, and these weren't names that were like if you use the same names now, they wouldn't have the same effect. You had Hogan. Hogan was still a good enough name and could still go in and wrestle. Hogan might wrestle one time this year, in the next year, and he's a beat up. I mean, if you saw the match, if you've seen any clips from the match from the HULKAMANIA tour, you see him and Flair. Wow. So there is that. Do you have you have Ric Flair? Ric Flair isn't what he was then. You don't. You have Sting. Sting isn't the name he was then. You don't have anybody the same probably name as Randy Savage or any of the other named guys you had in WCW at the time. And then it looks like they might sign RVD, which would be cool, I will admit. But who else are you going to bring in? I mean, you're going to have to, you know, I mean, there's that aspect of it too. Now, I'm sure TNA would be ecstatic, and I think they would be lying to you if because whenever they've done these live impacts haven't really, you haven't seen the increase in a rating you would imagine in a live show, and because of that, I would imagine, you know, if they can get over a 1.5, they would probably be ecstatic, which it wouldn't surprise me if they did that. If they did a 2 or above a 2, that would shock the hell out of me. I will freely admit. But it's not the same type of thing going in. You're taught, you know, TNA doesn't have the name recognition. My dad, when this was announced, I don't know if I've talked about it yet. I've done this video like 3 times, so if I have already, I apologize. But my dad this morning asked me, he goes, what is this I hear about Hulk Hogan starting a new, that's right, I said, new wrestling promotion. And I was like, he's not starting a new wrestling promotion. He's starting, you know, TNA. I've been to one of their pay-per-views. He's like, oh yeah, that's right. I said, yeah. He goes, oh, that's right. I said, yeah. And he said, oh, I thought it said that he started a new wrestling promotion. I'm sure there's lots of people, if my dad thought that, I'm sure there's lots of people that probably thought that aren't wrestling fans that kind of, you know, they know about wrestling and that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see. I'll say that. You know, and I'm sure people, you know, because they think that this will make wrestling better. I don't know if it'll necessarily make wrestling better. From all intents and purposes, WWE doesn't look at it as a threat, at least right off the bat. You know, and also, what are they going to do with Impact to make it different from WWE? First of all, if they don't fire the guys in the production truck, the production is going to look shit next to WWE. And you don't think Kevin Dunn is going to tell his guys, you know, and why are we even talking about the production guys? Stupid. This is how moronic. This is why the guy in TNA needs to be fired, because we're talking about the production trucks. You don't think that Kevin Dunn, because WWE knows, they know that we bitch about it, they know that the fans bitch about the production quality, that he's going to get his guys and going to go, we fuck up tonight, I bitch you the fuck out. We cannot fuck up tonight, because they're going to fuck up a whole bunch, and we have to look like the much more professional, much more slick, much better product as far as that goes than TNA. Okay? Because, let's face it, look what they do on a freaking pay-per-view. How are they going to do a 3-hour, you know, I mean, my mind boggles at what we might see as far as that, as far as the train wreck as that goes. There's all of that sort of stuff as well. I just, for someone that, you know, people kind of go, oh, you know, TNA's name isn't out there. I kind of disagree, because I don't know of anybody that I know, and I'm not talking about, I know wrestling fans who are not people on the internet who don't really follow wrestling like I follow wrestling, who, now most of them have never heard of Ring of Honor. They never heard of Ring of Honor until, you know, I was talking about Ring of Honor when Ring of Honor came to Houston. But they've heard of TNA. Some of them have seen TNA. Some of them, you know, my best friend, this is the best example, my best friend who despises wrestling, except the one time he went to ECW, and he loved it and all of that. I've talked about that about 100 times. He was at his birthday party one year, and I had to work because, you see, he's born in the wrong month. He's born in this month, and I work retail, which means, yeah, I don't get to go. He called me from his birthday party and said, there's this wrestling on TV behind us. And I'm like, oh, it's Thursday. Yeah, it's Impact. It's TNA. He goes, this is like a joke of a wrestling. This is like the most horrid wrestling I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, pretty much, yeah, it's not too good. And he's like, we're all laughing at it. And I'm like, I mean, he just went on this little tirade talking about the camera angles and just the production and the, you know, the guys were being goofy, and it was, you know, he goes, this is like nothing like you watch. I mean, he goes, just to demonstrate. If they put on that type of effort to people that don't normally watch the show, what does that tell you? You know, that sort of thing as well. And it's not to downgrade TNA. If TNA does good, more power to them. If Bischoff comes in, I don't see how the next 2 weeks of Impact looks kind of train wreckish to me, but we'll see when they air. leading up to the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view looks like it should be good, so we'll see. But yeah, people need to realize that this is a completely different thing going on, because TNA is not WCW, and it's not WCW before Nitro started. It is in a much worse place than when Nitro started. TNA is more like WCW when WCW died than when Nitro started. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is this is not the same WWE or F that Bischoff took on. When Nitro started, WWE as a whole sucked. Business sucked, and I'm not talking about, when we talk about, business is down, blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind, they were 2 years away from almost going legit bankrupt, belly up. Business was wretched at the time, and you think the company is stale now. You need to go watch stuff from back then. It was beyond stale. It was bad. It was wretched. It was retardedly it was horrid. I cannot explain. As bad as Raw is now, it's still not as bad as it was then. And you still have, SmackDown is much better than Raw is then. ECW is much better than Raw was then. And keep in mind, that's a 1-hour show, so you're pretty much comparing 1 hour to a 1-hour show. The fact that, both shows are going to be live. When Nitro started, Raw was not live. The fact that that you had lots of other things in WCW's favor, and even then I think people would have said, well, there's this, and this that WCW has going for it, but no one still had any faith in WCW because, people had no concept that, Eric Bischoff was going to start giving away free pay-per-view matches, or matches that, should have been on pay-per-view. He was going to start that whole thing. All of that was going to go on. What are they going to do to change the product? To really change the product to such a degree that you're going to get people to go, wow, this is different. This is, even if it's just slightly different, what are you going to do to be different other than just, oh, well, this is just like WWE, where, what are you going to do to that extent? Or, well, this is just WWE, but they've got enough money to buy out all the big names from WCW or WWE. What are you going to do to that extent? Lots of questions to be asked. Lots of questions to be answered. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see how it goes and all of that. So with that, I'm out. Have a good one, and later.